November of 2017, Temecula, California. Open sky, 5 groomsmen on my right. Andrea was in the back, and I was about to do something I had never done before stand under a permanent ceiling and mean it. I did not say vows that day, and neither did Andrea. We read each other's obituaries. That idea did not come from me. It came from David, one of the 5 men. He had shared with me years prior that the question on a wedding day is not what do I promise today, it is what do I intend to be at the end, not the start, the end, the last chapter, the final account. So we wrote them. She wrote mine, I wrote hers, and we read them out loud in front of God and the people who came to witness it. A man had grown up in 36 homes, had never once felt entirely chosen, stood under that open sky and made a declaration that could not be undeclared. Not a feeling, decision. The end of the story locked into the beginning of it, and everything we have built since rests on it. Every birth, every crisis, every ordinary Tuesday, every season love would have been easier to be withheld than to give. This is episode 5, Pillar H1, Husband Who Loves Sacrificially. And it is the most visible sermon your kids will ever hear about love, whether you mean to preach it or not. Welcome to the Father Blueprint. I'm Doug Androsky, founder of Fathering the Fatherless, and this show is for men who are done fathering by accident and ready to father on purpose. Last week was Pillar S, spiritual leader, going first, setting the ceiling, and if you missed it, go back. Today builds on it. And today is Pillar H1, the first H, husband who loves sacrificially. Most men hear marriage and tune out, figure it's for somebody else. The men who are struggling, the marriage is on the rocks. It's not for somebody else. It's for you. Whether your marriage is thriving or barely standing, because the way you love your wife is shaping your kids' definition of love right now, today. You don't get to opt out. The order of the shepherd framework is not random. The order is the design. Spiritual leader is first because everything in your home flows out of your relationship with God. But husbands come before any of the other pillars about how you father your kids directly. Before an encourager, before a protector, before an example, before a reprover, before a discipliner. There's a reason for that. The most important thing you'll ever do for your children is love their mother well. The most important thing. Not pay for college, not coach the team, not show up at every game, not provide a beautiful home. All of those matter. None of them matter as much as the daily, visible, unspectacular act of loving the woman you married in a way that they can see it. Because here's what's happening in your kids' mind, even when you're not paying attention. They are forming a template. What is a husband? What is a wife? How can men treat women, or how should men treat women? How love behaves when nobody is looking. That template will follow them into every romantic relationship they ever have. How they choose a spouse, how they handle conflict in their own marriage, what they tolerate, what they expect, what they don't even know to look for because they never saw it modeled. You're not just a father, you are a template. And the template you're building right now, the way you love your wife in front of them, will outlive you by generations. And before we go further, I have to give you the theology underneath this, because the word love is the most overused and the most undelivered word in the English language. We use it for the pizza and for our wives in the same breath. The Greeks refused that kind of impression. 3 of their words for love belong inside a marriage, and most men who can name them have never built all 3 into their own home. Knowing the vocabulary is not the same thing as doing the work. Knowing it is not the same as doing it. Eros, romantic love, passion, pursuit, the electricity, the intoxication of a person who captures your attention and won't release it. Eros is real. It is God-given. The Song of Solomon celebrates it without apology. A husband who has lost all Eros for his wife is not winning a spiritual battle. He is losing a marriage. Romantic and physical love belong inside a covenant. They are a gift, not a concession. but Eros alone has no floor. Feelings ebb, seasons go dry. A marriage built on Eros alone cannot survive what is coming. Then Philia, friendship love, companionship, the love that makes two people not just spouses but friends, the kind of friends who would choose each other even if they had not been married to each other. Philia matters most in the middle seasons, when the kids are young and exhausting and the romance has temporarily been overtaken by logistics. The couples who survive those seasons well are the ones who genuinely like each other. But Philia is also responsive. It rises and falls with the quality of the relationship. When trust breaks, Philia retreats. And a love that retreats when things get hard is not the love a covenant requires. Agape. This is the one that changes everything. Agape is unconditional, covenantal, not triggered by the worthiness of its object, not earned by the beloved, and not withdrawn when the beloved fails to earn it. It does not depend on how the other person is behaving, how the marriage is feeling, or what season the relationship is in. Agape is the love God has for us, the love that sent his son to die for people who were not yet lovable. It is the foundation beneath Eros and Philia that holds them up when the weight comes down. A marriage with all three, Agape as the bedrock, Philia as the friendship, Eros as the fire, can survive anything. A marriage with only Eros and Philia looks fine in good seasons. It can run that way for years, maybe a decade. But when the hard season comes, and it will come, the man who never built agape into the foundation discovers something he was not ready to discover. What he had been calling love was really comfort. And comfort, unlike covenant, has a ceiling. See, Ephesians 5:25, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. We've heard that verse so many times in the church, and it has stopped landing. So go somewhere specific with me, because the specific is where the weight lives. Gethsemane. A man on his knees in the dark, sweating drops of blood, asking the Father if there's any other way, and then rising. Not because the feeling told him to, not because it was easy, not because the people he was about to die for deserved it, because the covenant required it. The covenant required it. Love at its highest expression is not a feeling that compels. It is a decision that holds when everything in your humanity is screaming to walk away. See, God did not send a representative. He did not send a message. He did not offer a compromise. He sent his son, his only son, to die. That is the action. That is the measure. That is the standard Paul hands every husband who has ever read Ephesians 5. And I have to be honest with you, because this is a show that does not deal in comfortable half-truths. That standard is impossible to meet on your own. No man can sustain agape love by willpower alone. No man can love sacrificially, consistently across decades of marriage through dryness and conflict and disappointment and the slow grinding weight of ordinary life without a source of outside of himself. Which is why Paul does not just say love your wives like Christ. He writes those words inside a letter about being filled with the Spirit. Agape is not a human achievement. It is a supernatural fruit, grown in a man who has submitted to God, who first modeled it. You cannot love your wife the way Christ loved the church on your own. But a man anchored to the Father who sent his Son, that man has access to a love that does not run out. A love that holds in Gethsemane. A love that rises on the third day. That is the love your wife deserves. That is the love your kids are watching you build or fail to build every single day. The wedding was the declaration. Agape isn't proven in the declaration. It's proven in what comes after. Abigail, fall of 2018, our first. She turned 37 weeks. What should have been a straightforward path to delivery suddenly became a decision Andrea and I had never prepared to make. We were brand new parents, new state, new city, new uncertainty, old wounds reopened. My mother had arrived in town unannounced in the days before the birth. Andrea's parents were in town too. We were in an apartment that was not large enough for any of it. We got to the hospital and were told there was an emergency C-section ahead of us. The wait stretched. Andrea had been told not to eat. The delay extended that restriction far beyond what anyone had anticipated. and then her body went into shock. They called the ICU. Picture it. The woman I had stood beside under that open sky in Temecula, the woman whose obituary I had written and read out loud in front of God, was in a hospital bed going into shock, and her firstborn was about to arrive. My heart was torn in two. Andrea needing help in the bed in front of me, my first daughter arriving into a world that had not yet settled down enough to receive her gently. A man who would have done anything and could do so little. That's one of the particular helplessnesses of fatherhood. You love with everything you have, and sometimes everything you have is not enough to stop what is happening. Abigail was born. She was healthy, and Andrea recovered. But something in that room changed me. It showed me what the stakes actually were. The covenant I had made was not poetry. It was a man standing between his family and everything that threatened them, with everything he had, for as long as he lived. Sydney. Summer of 2021. 3 years later, our second daughter. The local anesthesiologist had warned us a spinal leak was possible during the procedure. We hoped it wouldn't happen, but it did. Sydney went into the NICU. Andrea was in recovery, and the hospital was managing her care, not advocating for it. And there's a difference. Managing is what a system does, championing is what a person does, and I was torn in half again. Sydney needed her father in the NICU. Andrea needed someone fighting for her, and I could not be in two places at once. So I made a call. We had a friend back in Littleton, an anesthesiologist who knew Andrea and knew us and knew her history. So I called him. He called his supervisor at the hospital where Andrea was being treated, and that supervisor came down. Not eventually. Not when it was convenient. Immediately. Andrea finally got the care she needed. Not because the system moved, because someone who loved her made a call that set things in motion. Andrea's mom was there, and I'm thankful for that. Thankful that Andrea wasn't alone while I was in the NICU with Sydney. That's what community looks like in a crisis. That's what it means to have people around you who know you and love you and show up. Andrea's father arrived sometime later. And I remember walking out of the hospital, and I looked at her father and I said, "Your daughter needs you. I need to take Abigail on a date." Not because I was finished, because Abigail needed her father present too. You see, sacrificial love is not a singular act directed at one person. It's a posture, a practice, a way of moving through the world that sees every person in your care and refuses to let any of them feel forgotten. Sydney was in the NICU. Andrea was finally receiving care, and Abigail needed her father. And I showed up. That's what the obituary in Temecula meant, not sentiment, architecture. The world has a version of this pillar. It calls it the emotional supporter, a man who is present, engaged, and responsive to his wife's emotional needs. There is real value in that. A husband who cannot engage emotionally is leaving a wound, and I'm not dismissing that. But the world's version has no covenant beneath it. It runs on reciprocity. And I'll be emotionally present as long as there is relationship is rewarding. I'll show up as long as you're showing up for me. I'll give what I'm getting. In the early years, you may not even notice the difference. Eros is strong, Philia is warm, reciprocity feels like love because the giving and the receiving are roughly even. Then the hard pregnancy comes, the job ends, the move isolates you, a child goes into NICU, your wife goes into recovery, and you're in the hallway between them and your children, and you cannot be in four places at once. In that moment, feeling-based love discovers its limit. Here's what conditional love does to a family. The wife stops bringing her full self to the marriage. She learns, not from anything he says, but from everything he does, that his love has conditions attached, that there are versions of her that are safe to bring home and versions that are not. So she becomes a managed version of herself, careful, guarded, presenting the face that keeps the peace rather than the soul that needs to be known. The loneliness of being only partially known by the man who is supposed to know you fully. That is one of the most particular kinds of pain a human being can carry. It does not look like a broken marriage from the outside, and it often looks like a functional one. The kids watch their mother manage herself. and they learn that love requires performance. They learn by being the right version of yourself that it's not safe to be fully known, because being fully known might cost you the love you need. That theology, that love must be earned and can be withdrawn, will follow them into every relationship they ever have, including their relationship with God. Let that sink in. That love must be earned and can be withdrawn, will follow them into every relationship they ever have, including their relationship with God. Because the first picture of Father's unconditional love is not a sermon, it's the man who comes from home from the hospital, who makes the phone call, who takes his daughter out to eat so she does not feel forgotten in the middle of a crisis, who wrote his obituary instead of his vows because he had already decided how the story ends. Let me bring this all the way down to the ground, because the wound conditional love leaves is the one of the quietest and most common in the church. So here's what it actually looks like. It looks like a wife who has stopped telling her husband how she really feels because the last 3 times she did, he got defensive or went silent or turned his back into something about himself. She manages herself, gives him the version he can handle, tells her friends what she cannot tell her husband, and the marriage is fine. In the way that an empty building is fine. It's standing, no one is bleeding, but nothing is growing in it either. It looks like a husband who provides financially, shows up at the games, helps with the dishes, and has not asked his wife a real question in 6 months. Not how was your day, a real question. Where are you with God right now? What are you carrying that you haven't told me about? What do you need from me that I haven't been giving? The questions that require you to know her well enough to ask them, and to love her enough to sit with the answer. It looks like kids who grow up watching their parents coexist politely, peacefully, without evident conflict, and graduate from that home with no idea what it looks like for 2 people to actually fight for each other. It looks like a man at 60 who looks at his wife across a dinner table after the kids are gone and the busyness has finally cleared, and realizes he doesn't know who she is anymore. Not because she changed, because he never went deep enough to find out who she was in the first place. This is the wound conditional love leaves, not a scar from a single event, a slow erosion. One uncomfortable conflict, one unasked question, one date night that kept getting postponed, one real conversation that never happened, until the distance becomes the architecture of the marriage, until the couple has built a life together and forgotten to build each other. So what's the fix? Andrea and I had learned that our default is weekly date nights. That doesn't always happen. 3 young daughters don't always cooperate. What we plan for, we protect it as the intentional, even when the execution falls short. In those spaces, over dinner, over coffee, in the car after the kids are asleep, we do the work of actually knowing each other, not managing each other, knowing. There's a pastor named John Piper who wrote about something he calls the state of the marriage conversation. Regular, intentional, not a crisis response, a covenantal discipline. Not how are we doing this week? How are we doing? Really? Where are you with me? Where am I missing you? What do you need from me that I haven't been giving? That conversation requires enough trust to be honest and enough commitment to stay in the room when the answer is hard. It is not a performance review. It is not a place to build a case or score points. It's the act of 2 people who made a covenant, choosing to stay known to each other, refusing to let the distance accumulate, refusing to let the silence become the default, refusing to become 2 people who share a home without sharing a life. And one more thing. Date your daughters too. This past weekend, we celebrated Boots and Braids Country Night 2026, a daddy-daughter dance. We had line dancing, and I called the men to just be themselves, to put their phones down, have fun. Those men chose to date their daughters. They took them out. They looked her in the eye, and they spoke into her and what she is becoming. A daughter whose father pursues her like that does not grow up searching for a man who will. She already knows what it feels like to be chosen. That is a gift that changes the trajectory of her life. Let me say this again. A daughter whose father pursues her does not grow up searching for a man who will. Again, a daughter whose father pursues her, does not grow up searching for a man who will. A daughter who has watched her father love her mother covenantally, who has watched a man take his wife on dates and ask hard questions, sit with hard answers, show up in the night shift, in the hospital room, in the ordinary Tuesday, she will know what to look for, and she will not settle for anything else. One question before we close, and it requires honesty, not the comfortable kind, the kind that you have to sit with. When is the last time you loved your wife in a way that cost you something? Not a grand gesture. Those are easy. The ordinary, unglamorous, unrewarded kind. The kind no one saw and no one applauded. When you were tired and she needed you to be present, did you show up or did you manage her? When the new baby came and the nights were impossible, did you take the night shift so she could sleep? Not once as a favor, as a practice. As the man who declared in front of God that he intended to love her to the last page, and means it on a Tuesday at 3 in the morning when no one is watching, and there's nothing romantic about it. When the season was dry and love was not returning, what you were investing in, did you stay at the well, or did you quietly begin to withdraw? When the crisis came, and if it has not yet come, it will, did you make the phone call? Did you take the 3-year-old out to eat so she would not feel forgotten? Did you cover what needed to be covered even when your heart was in 3 places at once? These are not trick questions. These are the questions that reveal whether you love your building, your marriage on has a floor. They are the questions that reveal whether the love you are building your marriage on has a floor. The floor is agape, a decision made before the feeling arrives. Held through every season, the feeling disappears. Sustained not by your willpower, but by the God who modeled it on a cross outside of Jerusalem on a Friday afternoon when the sky went dark, the earth shook, and the Son of God gave everything for people who deserved nothing. That is your standard. Not because it's designed to crush you, because it's designed to free you. To release you from the exhausting performance of love that depends on conditions, and to anchor you to a love that holds because it has already decided. Here's your one thing this week. Take your wife out. Just the two of you. Not for a logistical conversation, not the schedule or the kids or the house. Take her out and ask her one real question. Where are you with God right now? Or what are you carrying that you haven't told me about? Or what do you need from me that you haven't been getting? Pick one. Ask one. Then, this is the part most men get wrong. Do not defend yourself when the answers come. Do not turn into a conversation about you. Sit with the answer. Receive it. Let it cost you something. That's sacrificial love in one moment. And one moment repeated over years is what builds a marriage that lasts. And if your kids are old enough, let them see you do this. Let them see you put on a clean shirt and pick up flowers and pursue their mother on an ordinary Thursday with no occasion attached. Because what they see you do is what they will go looking for someday. Built to Father comes out June 7th. The full chapter on this pillar, the wedding and Temecula, the obituaries, all 3 births, the Gethsemane standard, it's in there. Find it at fatherinthefatherless.org. 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 Next week, Pillar E, Encourager and Nurturer, the man who speaks life. I'm Doug Androsky. This is the Father Blueprint. Show up, stay, and lead.